Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is SwanetteKuntze. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette and I'm your host. Today I have a guest. Her name is Pascale Dubé, and she is a communication expert and coach. Welcome to my show.
Hello, I'm super glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we already had some kind of experience with communication before, and I'm so happy that we are both experts in this field and we still have some kind of learnings in that. So I'm really happy that today we can speak together and you are here in my show. So tell me a little bit about how did you come to this idea of becoming a coach and a communication expert?
Yes, well, it's from my past. Growing up, I've always been a very creative person, really in tune with my emotions, and I grew up in a family where parents had a hard time communicating with each other, and they still do, 50 years into marriage. Growing up, I was always kind of the mediator in the family, or the translator, going back and forth so that people understood each other. So it comes from very early in my life. But coaching came a little later. Something happened in my family where when I was 10 years old, my eldest sister was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And of course, my parents put all of their energy towards helping her fight her illness. But I was just coming out of my childhood, and my other sister, because we're 3 sisters, I'm the youngest. My other sister was in her teenage years, so already struggling. She's more of an anxious nature. She has more of an anxious nature. So therefore, when my parents gave all their attention to my eldest sister, Sophie, Mart and I became really close, but I was more of the coach. I was helping her dealing with her own emotions. And I started journaling at the age of 10 to deal with my own issues, my own emotions. And I started to be really reflexive about the importance of not only understanding the people in front of me and trying to figure out what their inner state was, but also trying to be clear about my own expectations and communicating myself, my emotions, communicating them more clearly so that I can be understood. And I found out that communications basically is the basics of any relationship in our lives. And it's more important to communicate from a place of empathy in order for you to be understood. So I figured that out quite early in my life. And since my family life was not as amazing as it was when I was a child, because I had a fantastic childhood, I started helping my friends at school with their own issues and trying to make them realize that what was going on inside of them, everybody had a different inner state, and that you had to make sure that when you communicate with someone, you cannot just push your emotions on them. You have to articulate it in a way that your intention will be well received by the person that you are talking to. So that's where it comes from. But I haven't worked with parents and teenagers prior to this year because of COVID. I had to reassess my own values and my own priorities, and I figured I used to help business owners from small and medium enterprises with their communication skills with their teams. But I felt like I didn't have the impact that I wanted, and it wasn't really aligned with my own values and my own mission. And COVID hit, and we're facing all of these issues nowadays that we're going to have to find very, very creative solutions to really, really big problems. And I feel like teenagers are at the forefront of this innovation. So we have to make sure that we help and we guide them through these years of changing and turmoil, and accompany them. And that's why I coach parents, because I want to help them help their kids.
Yeah, okay. So I really understand that you have grown up with being very deep in the topic of communication, as it was always like you always said you were kind of sensitive, already feeling about what people have in their mood and what kind of mood they are. And so this all impacts, of course, our communication. It's not just about words, isn't it?
No, absolutely not. I think that's one of the mistakes people think. They think that because they use words, people will hear them. There's a difference, and it's a vast difference between being heard, which is only sensory, and well, you can shout at the top of your lungs, but the other person will not listen. So it's better to be understood than be heard, I believe. And it's not only words. Everything, your energy sends a message. Your nonverbal sends a message. And communications, basically 80% of the meaning you have in a conversation comes from the nonverbal. So basically, people listen a lot more with their eyes than they do with their ears. So make sure that when you have something to communicate, just assess what kind of emotional state you're in, because it will influence the way that the person receives what you're trying to tell them.
Yeah, normally we think, okay, we speak to one another, and of course we are clear in our message, but even though we were sending some information, the receiver is getting something totally different. No? It's like we have a kind of a coding and decoding system in between as well, not only that we have to speak with our gestures and mimic and giving out the emotions we do have, but already in our words we put out, we have this kind of problem.
Yes.
Can you go a little bit deeper into all this construct about how communication works or doesn't work? And
more oftentimes than not, it doesn't work. Well, everyone has their own inner world. We don't have the same experiences. So as we grow and learn and develop, there are some mechanisms that we develop that are basically, we learn skills that are based on our experience. And over time, those skills, they become patterns of communications, and they become also a kind of a filter within which, or lenses with which we see the world. Everyone has a different set of skills and of lenses. I'll do that metaphor. So basically, we don't see the world the same way some other person does. But we all feel the same emotions. The emotions is something that we all share. Now, depending on any situation, because of what we've learned in the past, none of us will have the same reaction to the same situation. So just by being aware that the person in front of me doesn't necessarily live the experience the same way I do, just by being aware of that, it can help connect more, because then you're more aware about the subtle signs of the state of the person in front of you. Do they seem nervous? Are they fidgeting? Are they looking at you when they're speaking to you, or are they looking elsewhere? Of course, our attention and our focus and our sensory system is designed for what we have in front of us. So if the person is not looking at you, there is a big chance that she doesn't hear or listen to what you're saying. So maybe take a breather and wait for the person to look at you before you put some important information forth. That's only one example, but there is this fantastic tool that we have that, unfortunately, I don't know if it's an occidental thing or if it's an adult thing, and maybe both, I don't know, but we tend to dismiss instinct and to dismiss gut feelings, and we tend to dismiss this reception we have from other people, what they bring into a conversation, because you've got your emotional state, but they have theirs. And we are designed in a way that if we are calm and in a good state, we can receive what the other person brings. And you can adapt the way you're speaking or the way you're talking to someone to make sure that you help them be in the right state of mind and of emotion to receive what you're saying. And it's even more important when you're a parent talking to a teenager, because it's chaos in a teenager's life, or in a teenager's body, even in their mind. It's chaos. So having a message and trying to have a message reach deep within your child, maybe you have to choose when you are talking to them even more carefully than you would with an adult, because adults are more masters of their own emotions. Teenagers are just going through the learning process of dealing with emotions. So I think communications is a lot more about listening. And when I say listening, is more about feeling too, listening, but also listen with your eyes and watch the signs, is more about listening than about speaking or talking. Because ultimately, if you want to have true connection with someone, you have to receive first before you can give. And I've had conversation with many people that when I was growing up, was trying to be of service and give advice and provide advice, but I had not learned back then that if the person is not ready to receive what you're about to tell them, if they're not at the point where they're ready to receive, the message will just, or they might even get angry at you. So it takes some time, and it requires some practice to be able to really decipher the person in front of you, or the many people in front of you, actually, because groups also have an energy, and you can kind of sense the vibe of an audience too. So yeah, and that's what I help people with. Try to relearn those basic social skills that we've had when we were growing up as really young teenagers, being able to feel things and use them properly in a communication setting.
Yeah, so what I understand, of course, we have our own emotions while we're in a conversation, but at the same time, we need to understand and feel the emotions of the other person. And somehow, if we are in kind of different moods, like, for example, if I'm kind of very angry because I'm so excited about the topic, or the other person is as well angry because he has another point of view, how can we then, from this kind of mood, sense the other person and have a good conversation? I think this is really difficult. So what could we do?
Yeah, that's a very difficult situation, because and it's also a reflex. When someone is angry and directing their anger towards you, we all have, we feel attacked. So of course, anger rises within us too. And it's a reflex. You have to work at it, because it's very hard to be the master of your own reaction. But what I like to remind my clients and to remind people is that although there's a stimulus coming from the other person, they're attacking you, or their anger is directed towards you, you are still in possession of the power of how you react. So the more you're conscious of this, the easier it gets. But of course, at first reaction would be to be reactive, and also, bring the energy up and be angry. But The problem with that is that if you don't react in a positive way, if you mimic the person that's angry in front of you, things can escalate quite quickly, and then communications doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. People don't listen. This closed down, and even, you know, attention closed down, and then it becomes a screaming match. And it's true too with teenagers. You know, when they're angry, screaming match is quite easy, and they know how to push the button of the parent because they know where they are. So yeah, it can be quite challenging. But the thing is, if you remain calm, and if you are able, which is also a skill that you can develop, if you remain calm and you speak lower, it's the same thing that when two people are screaming and are angry. If you speak to a lower tone of voice and stay calm and stay in possession of yourself, the other person naturally, because that's how we're wired, the other person naturally will, you know, perhaps bring it down a notch, or even go all the way to match you, to match your energy. And as a parent, you've got more experience than your teenager. And of course, you lived through, you know, many different and difficult stuff too. But if you can bring yourself to take a breath, like a deep breath before answering and before going into the argument, and you're able to calm yourself down, then it might help. But if you see that the energy of your teenager, of the other person in front of you, it does not go down, you just say, okay, we're not in a state where we can understand each other. We'll take a break, we'll breathe, and we'll talk about this later. It's never a good thing to keep pushing when you're in a state where communications can break down, trust can break down. You can say things that you'll regret, and then it's more difficult to mend the bridge if the bridge is broken. So it's better to take time aside, time apart, take time to calm yourself down. Breath is an amazing tool for that. And don't come back to the conversation until you feel like you can keep your calm and have this discussion in a low energy or basic energy, calm energy state. And it will help tremendously. Just this. And their anger might be justified. You don't know. You don't know what they've been through, you know, the past couple of minutes. You never know what another person goes through and what's going on in there, what's going on in their mind. So trying to be mindful that it's not because you are calm and you don't react dramatically to a situation that the past of the other person in front of you, maybe they've got a pain there, maybe they've got an experience that was traumatic. You don't know. You have no idea what's going on in their mind, or where they come from. And be a little more empathetic about why they're reacting this way, because there's always a reason for a reaction. You just don't know what it is.
Yeah, I totally get that. So it's very important that if you are a parent, to calm yourself down, doing some breath work, or if you're able to really work on your own emotions to bring yourself down before you start a conversation, if someone else is, or if your child or your is in a state of being angry, because otherwise it will come to a fight, definitely, yes. So what I also understand is that you have to understand the kind of situation your child has been in, like what was the situation, what was happening before, perhaps to try to walk a little bit in the path of your child to understand what really has happened and why, what was the trigger for the emotion your child is in at the moment. Can you give us a little bit more details how we can do that to walk in the path of someone else?
Oh, that's interesting, because we can never tread the path of someone else, but we can use our own experience Perhaps if you see a reaction that's really violent, or that the person reacts very strongly, think into your own past. Was there any moment in your life where you acted that way? What was the emotion inside of you? What kind of experience that triggered you and that made you go all the way into, you know, this higher state of you know, anxiety perhaps, or anger? Because as I said, the situations we live in, our filters are not the same, but we all have the same basic emotion. We've all felt angry. We've all felt fearful, guilty. We've all felt love. So we have the same palette of emotion, but the way we use it or why we use it might differ. But if you're talking to your teenager, first, you've seen them growing up. So the major events in their lives, you were there for up until the point where they start separating from you in their teenage years. But you've seen them growing up, so you know what the basic personality of that child is, and you know what triggered them in the past. So that you've got this pool of knowledge for your child that no one else has. So that's a good tool for you to use. But you also have, your spouse's past too. What kind of reaction does your spouse has? Does your teenager mimic, or does he replicate some pattern of behavior that whether you have or your spouse has? And you can then start to form a picture in your mind of what could have happened, like an hypothesis. That's for you to have a handle on what's going on. But just remember that your child has been separating from you. So there are other influences in your teenagers' lives, whether it's their friends, it's the teachers, it's the parents, and they're going through the fastest paced changes that you go through your life is through your teenage years. So there are lots going on hormonally, psychologically, socially, emotionally. Everything is kind of in a jumble. So if you can look back onto your own experience as a teenager, and if you can remember what it was growing up, it will also help you connect with your child, because I think everyone goes through this. Some people have it easier than others. Some people go through a very hard time. Some people are bullied. And nowadays, there's an added layer of difficulty that comes from social media, because parents don't necessarily see what's happening on there. So basically, your best source of information, if you can manage it, is your teenager. So if you feel like there's too much emotion or too many emotions involved in one particular discussion, take a time, take a breather, say you'll come back and discuss it again. But if you say you're going to do it again, start a conversation again. Don't just dismiss it or abandon it or push it underneath the carpet, because some of us, we don't like to have confrontations. We kind of avoid it. But your teenager still needs you, even though they might say otherwise. They still need your wisdom. They still need your experience, and they still need your love, because it's a hard time. They're having a hard time growing up. So if you can manage to form this picture in your mind about what could have happened, and maybe ask questions to your teenagers once you've both settled down and calmed down about, is this what's going on? If it's not this, they will tell you that it's not that. So try to investigate further, use your imagination and your experience, and try also to come to a place where you're asking questions because you're worried. Make sure that your teenager understands that it's your worry that makes you inquire, or your curiosity that makes you inquire. and it doesn't come from a place of judgment. That's very important, because judgment is the killer of any relationship.
Okay, so there are different techniques like asking questions and also showing their own emotions of being worried, for example. That is better than giving just advices like you have to behave, or orders, even worse, I think.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little bit more information about what are techniques, like, yeah, what kind of questions the parents can ask, or what else can they do to, yeah, go deeper in the, or hold the relationship with their children?
Yes. Well, as I said, communications for me is the ultimate goal. And since your teenager is slowly becoming the adult that they will become for the rest of their lives, it's even more important to teach them how to first express their needs in a manner that will serve them. And it starts by example. So if the parent doesn't share his or her vulnerability, if they don't start to show a more imperfect face to their teenager, and they're not ready to let go of a former image of themselves where they were the hero of their kids, to become human and imperfect, then things might go south. So that's one thing. A lot of inner work, because of course I can teach them what kind of question to ask, but it's very, very different from everybody's different, and the issues of one teenager may not be the same of another a teenager. But what I found is that most parents feel the same things, which is they fear that their kid is being bullied or neglected, or that they're not providing the support that their teenager needs, and they fear that the relationship will be broken or will break and never be the same it used to be. Well, a little note on that. This fear that the relationship with your kid will never be the same it used to be, that's true. That's life. Things change, things evolve. What you have to ask yourself is, what kind of relationship do I want with my teenager or my kid in the future? You have to start to ask yourself that right now, because it will only go faster and faster. But to come back to your question, make sure you, I think one of the most important things is make sure that you still devote some one-on-one time with your teenager, like quality time, not just do your chores, you know, clean your bedroom, come back at 10 o'clock. Try to have like meaningful time with your teenager, because these are the times when your teenager might open up to you. You have to have quality time with them. They might not want it, but if you allow the space and you bring them into being more responsible, perhaps you can even invest them or involve them in choices in your household, you know, help them figure out, you know, what do you want for at the supermarket? Is there something you want to have for lunch? Try to involve them, teach them things, new skills. They're at the time in their lives where they are actually craving new experiences. And if you as a parent can provide part of this learning and new experiences and teaching them, but more like one-on-one and equal, in an equal way, they will respond to that, because they will not feel like you infantilize them. They will feel like, okay, my parent is accepting that I'm growing up. I feel motivated. I feel self-esteem also is a big thing. So if you involve them and try to guide them through choosing what is choosing, because they're making more and more choices that have impact in their lives, making them aware that every choice has a consequence too, and that they can actually imagine and measure the outcome of the choices that they make. This is huge, because once they understand that they're responsible for what their choices are, they're basically ready to be an adult. Their brain may not be ready, but they're coming there.
Yeah, what you just also said, I find it very interesting. Do parents really have a vision or an idea how they want to establish the relationship with having in some time an adult with them? So like, what is it like how I was in the situation having a child? Okay, I was the mother or the father, so I was the one telling my child how to behave and teach them everything. But now, as I have a teenager, and then I have and very soon I will have an adult with me. So what is my vision? I do have like having someone kind of on eye level, or how you would call that, with me. Do parents really have a vision about that? Do you hear about that?
I think that's one of the major problems, because as their teenager grows, sometimes parents tend to look in the past and have this image of the perfect family when it was a unit, when everybody was, always all the time together. And there's a very steady pace in which a parent has to basically, it's like a small death, because they have to realize that that's in the past. Things are changing, and sometimes they have to mourn the childhood of their teenager in order to welcome the ever-growing person in front of them. And sometimes they don't even recognize the person in front of them, because they only remember, oh, it was so nice when you were little, you needed me. Well, they still need you, but what they need from you has changed. So I help parent also transition from being a parent that's super involved in their children's life, to start letting go gradually, in order for them to face the fact that the kid, when you make a child, it's to eventually have him leave you, which is, it can be very sad for a parent, and it can be triggering all sorts of emotions. I've spoken with mothers who feel a lot of guilt because they feel like they haven't prepared their kid enough, or are they doing everything they can? And what I tell them is always the same thing, is unless there is, mental issues and problems, every parent does their best, but they don't know everything. And that's where I come in. I mean, some people need help. And if you need help, I think you should not be afraid to ask for it, because it shows, even to your teenager, it shows that you're willing to improve, you're willing to grow. It teaches them a lesson too, because they say, okay, it's not because I'm an adult, or when I'll be an adult, I'm not a fixed person. I can always make different choices and change and evolve. So do parents really have a plan in the long run? Sometimes we're caught up in everyday life, and it's hard to look up and see what's in the future. But if you don't take a moment to actually think about this, what my relationship should be like, or what would I love for it to be? If you restrain yourself in your vision of your future relationship with your teenager, there is a greater possibility that this will become reality, and you may not be able to mend a relationship. It's harder to mend it the further in life you are. So right now is the time to prepare for the future. And you can also ask your teenager, because they're also caught up in their everyday life. So your teenager may not even have thought about it. Okay, what do you want to be in the future? Okay, what would be your ideal relationship with me when you're away, when you're on your own? What can I bring and what can I do for you so that we make sure that this is the good relationship we want moving forward. And your teenager may have surprising answers that can actually reassure you. Well, I want us to have a great relationship. Well, good. Okay, let's work together to make that happen. And then relationship is mended.
What I also see is, like, of course, the role of the parents change. Like, now they have to kind of let go of the how can I say, the very tight relationship, and it becomes more wide, and still you have to communicate. So now, how does this work now if you only can communicate by phone or by, I don't know, social media, because your child is already in another town studying, or leaving the own household? So also this kind of communication will change. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, as people, as teenagers grow older, if you've done a great job as a parent, first of all, the separation, it must be very hard for a parent to let go of a child. If I can only look in my own experience, I left home. I was older. I was in my 20s when I left, but still, it was hard for my parents to let me go. And a lot of people and a lot of parents, they invest so much in their child that they kind of forget to work on themselves. And even though I said, you have to have a plan for your relationship with your teenager, you also have a plan for, okay, what do I want my life to be when my kid is away, when he's no longer or she's no longer at home? What do I want in my life? Do I have projects? What am I interested in? What can I do once my teenager has left? The problem is, if you don't ask yourself this question and start working towards a life when your teenager will no longer be there, the emptiness will be somehow might be even more unbearable, because you don't have anything to fill your own life. You've sacrificed so much, and that's the thing. But once a kid is away, communications, if you feel like you've prepared them well, then you don't have to talk to them every day, every single day, every minute of the day, because you know that if something comes up, they will reach out. They will reach out, and you will also feel free to reach out to them whenever you worry or you. But basically, they will be their own person, and you have to accept that. The earlier you accept that your teenager will be eventually an adult that will be their own person, and that then you'll have I would say a secondary role in their lives later on. Once you've accepted that, then you can start to focus on other things, but the relationship will stay strong and well. And then, I don't know, grandkids.
Yeah, but still, I would like to know a little bit more about how we can interact if we don't speak so much in person anymore. Like, if we're sitting in front of each other, even if it is digitally, we can see each other, and yeah, we can see our gestures, and perhaps we can, if we sit in person together, we can feel our emotions more intense than just having a phone call or chatting, or like, I think the way we are communicating or the tools we use also will change if we have to speak in a distance. Of course, digitally, we now have kind of, whatever it is, I don't want to call a name, but yeah, we have the possibility, as we now speak, to see each other, even though we are in really the different countries, and so. But I think it makes a difference sitting together in person and having the digital communication, or just even don't see each other and using a chat or phone.
I didn't understand the question, I think. Well, Yeah, that's true. There are good ways and bad ways with which we can use technology nowadays. I remember when I did my first huge, I traveled abroad when I was younger, and the only thing we had was a phone, and it was very expensive to call home. So of course, the level of communications between my parents and I was, and I'm only looking back on my own experience, but it must have been hard for my parents to just like have no communications for a few weeks, and I was still young. Now we can see each other, as you said. We can have some type of intuition about how the other person is feeling, because we can now see them, at least, from the bust up. We can see their face. Face is very expression. The most expressions come from the face and the features. So we can see that through Zoom or other medium. But so that's an improvement, I would feel, on the part of technology. If your kid is very far away from you, you can still at least see their face and kind of intuit what's going on, because the emotions can show in the face. You cannot necessarily feel them energetically like they are standing or sitting next to you, but at least you've got a little more information that you used to when it was only the phone. But there's another thing that I think we tend to dismiss or we forget about, is the tone of voice. A lot of information comes also from the way people are speaking. I don't know if you've ever had this, but I've had phone calls with people in my life where I could tell that they were on the brink of crying just by listening to the voice. So this is also a skill that some of us have, some of us is not as well developed as it used to be, but there are all those tiny subtle information that goes through the way we communicate. And of course, body language, expression, and nonverbal is important, but there's also this tonality. And we've got these amazing senses that work on another level, where we can get these subtleties from speaking or from hearing. Of course, the more information you have, the easier it is to read people. But this is one of the positive side of technology. Now, there are other negative sides of technology, which is sometimes we rely on it too much, and we have forgotten what it entails to be with someone, like truly be with someone. And we've got phones, we've got, we're always compelled to look at it, which is addictive. We've seen it. I once went to a conference where everybody was on their phone, and the person giving the conference in front of the room, just nobody was listening at all. There's something that's missing, I think, is the way to use technology in a humane way. Like there's a right way and there's a way that's not so good using technology. And of course, our teenagers grew up with technology. When I was younger, there was television, the phone, that was about it. There was not even internet. Now teenagers grow up with this technology. Is there a danger there that they might not be able to fully develop their skills of feeling another person and being there with another person, and be able to stop the hamster from growing and thinking about your phone and just fully hear what the person in front of them is saying? I think there is a danger for that. But ultimately, we haven't evolved as quickly biologically. I mean, we haven't evolved as quickly as technology has evolved. So there will be challenges moving forward for sure about technology. And there, COVID hit, and we developed all those reflexes that, okay, let's talk on Zoom, or let's do a Google Talk or whatever. And we now interact through an interface or through texts that are really succinct and doesn't give you much information. So if there was one mission I would give parents, it would be to be the old fart and the uncool person who interacts mostly in person as they grow up, just to make sure that they still develop those skill set of interacting with another human and not through technology. That's one-on-one in person, and decipher the signs as much as they can, because
yeah, I totally get that. And also my experience being older, I'm not growing up with the internet. It only came later when I was, I don't know, 20 years old already. So now seeing all even the children, the younger ones, having the mobile phone while they are in a setting, having communication with someone else, for me it's like, okay, put your phone beside. I want to talk to you now for whatever, 10 minutes. After that, you can have another look. But while I'm speaking with you, the phone is not in between of us, and you don't check your messages, whatever you want to check, it needs to stop for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're not concentrated on our communication. It doesn't work. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right about that. But there's a caveat about that, because if you ask that or require that from your teenager, you have to be able to do it too. You have to be able to do it yourself, because teenagers are sponges. And if what you do and what you say isn't consistent, they'll point it out to you. So if yourself have a hard time managing your relationship with your phone, don't think that your teenager will manage their relationship with the phone. So teaching by example is still huge when you have a teenager. Be consistent. Make sure that what you say and what you do is aligned, because they will be prompt and very, very quick to pick up on that and call you out. And that's good, because they're also sending information. Be consistent. Okay, yeah, that you were right. I wasn't consistent. Admit when you're wrong. There's nothing wrong about admitting when you're wrong. And I'm sorry. Say I'm sorry too. How can you expect a teenager to come to you and say they're sorry or admit that they're at fault if you never do it yourself? That doesn't happen. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, so leading by example, being a good role model is always a good tip, yeah, and being consistent in what you're telling someone and how you behave by yourself. So
yes.
This is always like, okay, do this.
Yeah, and most parents say, do this, do that, do this, do that. Do you do it yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. So you already gave us so many good examples and good tips. If people are now interested to come in contact with you, where can they find you?
Yes, they can find me. My website is almost up. So by the end of July, it will be up and running. The website is called parentleadcoaching in one word.com. There will be information about what my services are and who I am, where I come from, but I told quite a bit of a story of myself already. There's a link on the website as well to have a free strategy session with me. So I offer 15-minute strategy session. It's completely free. We can assess where you're at, what's your outcome, what's your challenges with your teenager. There's also a group on Facebook called ParentleadCoaching as well. It's open. If anyone wants to reach out through Facebook, is a very good way to reach out to me. I'll also provide a link to LinkedIn, because I've been coaching SMEs, small and medium enterprises leader. So if you're a business owner and you require help with your communications with your teams, I can still do that. Free strategy session is also up. So there are quite a few ways with which you can reach me. And I also have a giveaway coming mid-August, starts August 16th, and it's called the Parents Stress-Free Back to School Giveaway to help parents prepare for back to school. So they will also provide the link, and it starts August 16th.
Yeah, wow, thank you so much. I will put all the links in the description below so that people can easily reach out to you and get their free gift or the first session to understand more about what they can do with their teenagers and how the communication and the life together will be more smooth for the future. So yeah. Thank you so much for being my guest today. It was very joyful for me to listen to you.
Thank you so much for a very, very nice conversation. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Swanette.
Yeah, hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, spiritualchangemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual Changemakers Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous episodes.